Write one number which fits all three of these statements. It is a multiple of 4, it is a multiple of 6, it ends in 8. So we need to remember that a multiple of a number is in that number's times tables. So multiples of 4 are numbers in the 4 times table, and multiples of 6 are numbers in the 6 times table. Now we need a number that is both a multiple of 4 and a multiple of 6, so we need a common multiple of 4 and 6 that also has to end in an 8. So we can have 48. That's a multiple of 4 because 12 times 4 is 48, and it's a multiple of 6 because 8 times 6 is 48 as well. And of course it ends in an 8, so we have our answer. Now explain why a number which ends in 3 cannot be a multiple of 4. That's because multiples of 4 are always even numbers. They always end in 0, 2, 4, 6 or 8. The shaded shape is a parallelogram. Write in the coordinates of point A. So we need to find the coordinates for this point here. And the way to do this is to write what we can find out on the axes of our coordinates grid. So we have the point 15, 17 here, and the first coordinate is always the x coordinate. So we can go down and write 15 on our axis. Now this point here, we have an x coordinate of 20, and the difference between 15 and 20 is 5. So because the shape is a parallelogram, the difference between this point and this point will be the same as the difference between this point and point A. So if we look, the x coordinate for this point here is 35, and if the difference is the same, that means point A will be at 40. So the x coordinate of point A is 40. Now we need to find the y coordinate. We can see that point A is in line with this point here, which has a y coordinate of 27. So that means the y coordinate of point A is 27 as well. So A has the coordinates 40, 27. Runa and John each start with the same number. Runa rounds the number to the nearest 100. John rounds the number to the nearest 10. Runa's answer is double John's answer. Explain how this can be. Well, 100 is double 50 because 50 times 2 is 100. So if we have the number 51, 51 rounded to the nearest 100 is 100, because to the nearest 100 it's closer to 100 than it is to 0. But 51 rounded to the nearest 10 is 50, because it's closer to 50 than it is to 60. So they could have started with the number 51. They could also have started with 50, 52, 53 or 54, because these numbers round to 50 if we're rounding to the nearest 10, but round to 100 if we're rounding to the nearest 100. Draw a rectangle whose perimeter is 18 centimetres. You must use the lines of the grid. So we need to remember that the perimeter is the total distance around the outside of a shape. So we could have a rectangle with a length of 8 centimetres and a width of 1 centimetre, because 8 plus 1 plus 8 plus 1 comes to 18, so that's the perimeter. Or the way I would think about this, 2 times 8 is 16, 2 times 1 is 2, and 16 plus 2 is 18. And that's a rectangle because we have opposite sides of the same length. We could also have a rectangle like this, with a length of 7 centimetres and a width of 2, because 2 times 7 is 14, 2 times 2 is 4, and 14 plus 4 again is 18 centimetres. Or we could have 6 by 3 centimetres, because 2 6s make 12, 2 3s make 6, and 12 plus 6 is 18 as well. Or we could have a 5 by 4 rectangle, because if we have 2 lengths of 5, that makes 10, and 2 widths of 4 makes 8, and 10 plus 8 is 18, so that's the perimeter. Write these numbers in order, starting with the smallest. So we have 5 quarters, 7 sixths, 17 twelfths, and 4 thirds. So we have improper fractions, but we compare improper fractions in the same way that we compare proper fractions. So we need our denominators to be the same. Now 12 is our largest denominator, and 12 is in the 4 times table, it's in the 6 times table, and it's in the 3 times table. So we can find equivalent fractions which have a denominator of 12. So first, for 5 quarters, 4 times 3 is 12, and what we do to the denominator, we need to do to the numerator as well, and 5 times 3 is 15. Now we have 7 sixths, 6 times 2 is 12, 7 times 2 is 14. And for 4 thirds, 3 times 4 is 12, 4 times 4 is 16. So now our smallest fraction will be 7 sixths, because that's only equivalent to 14 twelfths. Then we have 5 quarters, because that's the same as 15 twelfths. Then 4 thirds, which is the same as 16 twelfths. And then our largest fraction is 17 twelfths, because the larger the numerator, the larger the fraction, if the denominators are the same. There are 12 points marked around this circle. The points are equally spaced. Join 3 points to make an isosceles triangle. So we need to remember that 2 sides of an isosceles triangle are the same length. So we could join this point here, and this point here. That way, when we connect our points, we can see that this line is the same length as this line here. And we know that because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 points in between on this side, and 1, 2, 3, 4 points in between on this side as well. Or we could have these points here, we could have these points here, or we could even have these 3 points here. Now there are lots of possible answers for this question, but as long as you've got the same number of points on 2 of your sides, you have 2 sides of the same length, so that's an isosceles triangle. Here is a diagram for sorting numbers. Write 1 number in each white section of the diagram. So for this section here, we need a number that's a multiple of 20 and less than 1000. So remember, a multiple of 20 will be a number in the 20 times table, or a number that we can divide by 20 without getting a remainder. So we could have the number 20 here, because 20 is in the 20 times table, and it's less than 1000. But there are lots of possible answers here. We could have 40, 60, 80, 100, and so on. Now we need a multiple of 20 that's 1000 or more. So we could have 1020, because if we count up in 20s, the ones digit will always be a 0, and then the tens digit will be 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0. So we could also have 1040, 1060, and so on. Now we need a number less than 1000 that is not a multiple of 20. Again, there are lots of possible answers, but we could have the number 1. And now a number that's not a multiple of 20, but is 1000 or more, we could have 1001. Here are some shapes drawn on a grid. Write the letters of the two shapes that are equal in area. So the area of a shape is the amount of space that it takes up. So the amount of stuff that's on the inside of a shape. So we have this grid, and each part of the grid is a rhombus. But for part A, we have 2 whole rhombuses and 4 half rhombuses. So what's easier is to split all of our rhombuses in half so that all of these parts of the shape are the same size, and then we can see that we've got 8 half rhombuses or 8 triangles altogether in shape A. Now in shape B we can count 7 triangles. For shape C, if we split our whole rhombuses in half, then we can count 9. And for D, if we split this whole rhombus in half, and these may not look the same size, but each part takes up half of a rhombus, so that's 8 altogether. So the shapes that are equal in area are shape A and shape D.